Can you believe it? The earth beneath our feet may never have been humanity's true home, but rather a temporary refuge after a cosmic exile. The history, power structures, and civilizations we think we understand may all be part of an elaborately woven lie. And the others lurking among humanity may have already controlled the global order for nearly 1,000,000 years. In 1994, at an underground UFO conference in the United States, a former U.S. Army helicopter pilot slowly stood up and, under the skeptical gaze of the entire audience, delivered a series of shocking statements, word by word. "I'm not crazy and I'm not a fantasist. I'm simply repeating the cosmic truth that the Andromedan Zenata beings told me. Humanity's ancestors came from the Lyra constellation, and the Draco reptilian race has been quietly controlling Earth for 1.5 million years." His words hit the room like thunder, striking a lake, instantly exploding within the UFO community. The shockwaves spread from underground conferences to the early internet, and eventually into the era of short-form videos and mass discussion. Some denounced him as a fraud, others revered him as a prophet, but many more, after watching his full interviews, fell into deep self-doubt, questioning whether the world we believe we know is real or carefully designed by unseen hands. Within UFO circles, people claiming contact with extraterrestrials are hardly rare. Most, however, are ordinary individuals whose statements lack credibility. What made this man different was his identity. The person who presented these astonishing claims at the underground conference was named Alex Collier, a former U.S. military helicopter pilot. In the eyes of his supporters, this background became the core evidence of his credibility. According to publicly available information, Collier was born in the United States in 1956. As a young man, he joined the U.S. military and, after rigorous training, became a helicopter pilot, during which he participated in certain classified military missions. After leaving the service, he entered the business world and lived an ordinary life until 1994, when he suddenly broke his silence and publicly revealed his experiences of contact with extraterrestrial civilizations. Supporters argue that being a military pilot implies disciplined logic and sharp observational skills, making it unlikely that he would fabricate such absurd stories out of thin air. Moreover, his military background may have given him access to classified information beyond the reach of ordinary people. Perhaps it was this very exposure that led extraterrestrial civilizations to choose him as their messenger. At the conference, Collier claimed that he had 3 key encounters with extraterrestrial beings. The first encounter occurred in 1964, when Collier was only 8 years old. That day, while playing in his backyard, he suddenly felt an intense wave of dizziness. The scene before his eyes began to distort, and in the next instant, he disappeared from where he stood. When he regained consciousness, he found himself in an unfamiliar space with no visible walls, only soft, diffuse light. Standing before him were several beings about 7 feet tall, with heads slightly larger in proportion than those of humans. Oval-shaped dark purple eyes, no obvious mouths or noses, and pale blue skin. These unknown beings stood silently in front of Collier. Although they made no audible sound, he could clearly hear their voices in his mind. The encounter was brief. They conveyed only a vague message, that he had been chosen. He was then returned to his backyard, as if everything had been a dream. Yet the intense dizziness and the appearance of the extraterrestrial beings were deeply etched into his memory. The second encounter took place in 1970, when Collier was 14 years old. During this contact, the blue beings appeared again and transmitted more fragmented cosmic information, including ideas such as humanity's home is not Earth, and multiple civilizations exist throughout the universe. At the time, however, Collier was too young to understand the meaning of these messages and felt only confusion and fear. The most critical third encounter occurred in 1985, when Collier was 29. He claimed that he was taken off Earth by the blue beings and brought aboard the Andromedan Zenata mothership located at the edge of the solar system, where he underwent 3 months of cosmic knowledge instruction. This experience became the core source of all his subsequent claims. According to Collier, the very first truth the Zenata beings revealed to him during the lessons aboard the mothership was a revelation that completely overturns human understanding. Humanity did not originate on Earth, but in the Lyra constellation, approximately 25 light-years away. As described by the Zenita beings, Lyra once possessed an exceptionally stable stellar system and highly favorable planetary conditions. It was one of the few regions in the universe suitable for the long-term survival of the human race. At that time, Lyra contained 14 planets inhabited by humans. These worlds were interconnected and gradually formed a vast human civilization sphere, later recorded as the golden home of the universe. The human race lived in the Lyra constellation for roughly 40 million years. Over this immense span of time, humanity continued to evolve, eventually giving rise to a highly prosperous and fully matured civilization. Unlike modern humans on Earth, the physiological structure and level of consciousness of the Lyrans far exceeded our current understanding. Their skin exhibited a distinctive red coloration, not as an innate trait, but as the result of Lyra's planets being rich in copper-based minerals, combined with the long-term radiation of a binary star system. The average lifespan of the Lyrans ranged from 300 to 425 years, and as their civilization advanced, the lifespans of some individuals were extended to as much as 3 times that length. Even more astonishing, the Lyrans were regarded as beings of the 5th dimension. They could perceive 3 additional color spectra invisible to third-dimensional humans on Earth, and they had achieved an almost ultimate level of mastery over the use of cosmic energy and telepathic abilities. In terms of social structure, Lyran society was oriented around agriculture, forming a social system in complete harmony and symbiosis with their planetary environment. Their agricultural communities were not only entirely self-sufficient, but also continuously repaired and optimized planetary ecosystems through specialized cultivation methods and energy regulation technologies. As a result, the entire civilization sphere remained in a long-term state of ecological balance and spiritual abundance. For this reason, Lyran society had no wars and no division between rich and poor. The shared goals of all individuals were limited to just 2: elevating their level of consciousness and protecting their common home. Unfortunately, this peaceful way of life did not last long. A sudden cosmic catastrophe utterly destroyed this flourishing civilization. This conflict was later known as the Lyra War, a life-and-death struggle between the human race and the reptilian race. The initiators of the war were the reptilian beings from Alpha Draconis, also known as the Draconians. According to the Zenita beings, the Draconians were an ancient cosmic race, large in stature, cold-blooded, and ruthless, driven by a service-to-self consciousness focused on conquest and plunder as the core of their civilization. Upon discovering Lyra, they were drawn by its abundant resources and habitable environment. Coupled with their misunderstanding of the Lyrans' telepathic form of communication, they interpreted it as a provocation and thus launched an invasion. The brutality of the war far exceeded human imagination. During the conflict, 3 Lyran planets, Bila, Tekka, and Merak, were completely destroyed by draconian weapons, with all life on those worlds reduced to ash in an instant. More than 50 million Lyrans were killed, and the 14 once thriving human-inhabited planets were left in ruins. Even more tragic was Lyra's ultimate fate. After the war ended, one of Lyra's stars underwent a violent explosion, forming what we now observe as a ring nebula, known in astronomy as the Eye of God. This nebula stands as both a testament to the former glory of Lyran civilization and a tombstone marking this cosmic catastrophe. The 14 once habitable planets have since become a silent, lifeless region of space. After the collapse of Lyran civilization, the surviving Lyrans were forced to flee their home and began a massive interstellar migration. This was an escape journey that spanned the Milky Way. At that time, the Lyrans traveled aboard large spacecraft known as arcs, carrying the remaining sparks of their civilization as they fled to every corner of the galaxy. According to Lyran accounts, their migration routes covered multiple major star systems, including the Pleiades, Sirius, Arcturus, Andromeda, Cygnus, Alpha Centauri, and others. Throughout the journey, they not only had to evade relentless pursuit by the Draco reptilians, but also search for new worlds suitable for survival. As a result, many perished along the way, some in interstellar storms, others from severe shortages of resources, leaving them in extremely harsh conditions. To avoid capture, the Lyrans even devised a method of hiding inside hollowed-out asteroids. They excavated the interiors of large asteroids and transformed them into temporary shelters, using the asteroid shells as protection against attacks, while cultivating crops and sustaining their population inside. The Zeneta beings who invited Collier aboard the mothership are, in fact, direct descendants of the Lyrans. After fleeing Lyra, they endured 21 generations of displacement. Only later, with assistance from the Cassiopeans, did they finally settle in the Andromeda galaxy and rebuild their civilization. The Zeneta beings told Collier that we, the humans of Earth, are a branch outcome of this great Lyran migration. After the major Lyran planets were destroyed during the Lyra War, some Lyrans discovered Earth during their flight. Although Earth's environment at the time was harsh, it lay far beyond the sphere of influence of the Draco reptilians. As a result, they settled here, reproduced, and gradually evolved into modern humans. In other words, we are not native inhabitants of Earth, but extraterrestrial exiles from Lyra. To support this claim, the Zeneta beings offered what they described as compelling evidence. They stated that human DNA still retains fragments of Lyran genetic material, a shared characteristic of the human race throughout the universe. In addition, the Titan giants, recorded in ancient human mythology, as well as the Bigfoot legends found around the world, are said to be based on Lyrans. Because Lyrans generally stood over 2 meters tall with powerful builds, they appeared as giants to early humans on Earth. On the level of language, the Zeneta beings also presented a startling claim. All languages on Earth originated from an ancient Proto-Sumerian language called Tamil. This language was originally used in the Lyra constellation in the Pleiades. After the Lyrans migrated to Earth, they brought this language with them. Over tens of thousands of years of evolution, it gradually diversified into the various languages we know today, such as Chinese, English, and French. If the theory of humanity's Lyran origin was already mind-shattering, then what the Zeneta beings described next, the theory that the reptilian race controls Earth, was the most horrifying and central bombshell of that conference. The Zeneta beings claimed that after destroying Lyran civilization, the Draco reptilians did not stop there. Instead, they launched a galaxy-wide hunt for Lyran descendants. The first core motive was to eliminate them completely, preventing any possibility of awakening and revenge by Lyran descendants. The second was to continually harvest the energy contained within Lyran genetics, using it as the core fuel sustaining their own civilization. The Zeneta beings emphasized that Lyran DNA contains a rare emotional energy carrier found in the universe. This energy not only supports the functioning of higher dimensional consciousness, but is also key to the Draco reptilians' own enhancement of power. This, they said, is the fundamental reason the reptilians refuse to spare any branch of the Lyran lineage. Eventually, using advanced interstellar tracking technology, the Draco reptilians followed the migration trail of the Lyrans, systematically narrowing their search. Around 1.5 million years ago, they finally locked onto Earth, a remote planet that Lyran descendants had chosen as a refuge. At that time, the Lyran descendants on Earth had only just established a foothold and had not yet rebuilt an advanced civilization. Both their technological level and spiritual abilities were at a low point, giving the Draco reptilians a clear opportunity. Thus, a planetary control plan lasting over 1 million years was set into motion. What followed was not an instant takeover of Earth by the Draco reptilians, but a process that unfolded through 3 progressively escalating stages. Each stage precisely targeted the survival conditions of the Lyran descendants, ultimately constructing an airtight web of control. The first stage spanned from approximately 1.5 million years ago to 100,000 years ago, and was a period of violent colonization by the Draco reptilians on Earth. Upon their initial arrival, the Draco beings, wielding an overwhelming technological advantage, launched multiple suppression campaigns against the early Lyran-descended humans, easily crushing scattered human tribes. To avoid surface-level cosmic observation and any potential rescue by future Lyran allies, the Draco reptilians chose to establish their bases deep within the Earth. They excavated vast underground facilities centered in the mountainous regions of Madagascar, beneath the Antarctic ice sheet, and within subterranean cave systems across the Americas. These serve simultaneously as habitats, military fortresses, and secret bases for experiments on human genetics. During this stage, the Draco reptilians controlled humanity through a form of domestication, regularly capturing humans to extract genetic material and harvest negative emotions, while deliberately destroying the cultural and civilizational continuity of human tribes, forcing humanity into a state of ignorance. The second stage occurred between 100,000 and 100,000 years ago. As human societies gradually began forming early civilizations, the Draco reptilians altered their strategy. Rather than relying on direct violence, they weakened humanity indirectly by manipulating natural environments and instigating conflicts between tribes. The most emblematic example is the legendary civilization of Atlantis. According to the Xanada beings, Atlantis was the first highly advanced civilization established by Lyran descendants, one that retained portions of Lyran's spiritual technology and thus posed a threat to Draco control. In response, the Draco reptilians secretly manipulated tectonic activity, triggering massive floods and earthquakes that completely destroyed Atlantis. At the same time, they erased all records related to Lyra and extraterrestrial civilizations, causing humanity to forget its origins entirely and become a species with no knowledge of where it came from or where it is going, laying the groundwork for later psychological control. The third stage extends from about 10,000 years ago to the present day. During this period, human civilization entered an accelerated phase of development. The Draco reptilians realized that control through brute force and enforced ignorance could not be sustained indefinitely. They therefore initiated a genetic integration program, combining their own genetics with human DNA to create hybrid beings, part human, part reptilian. These hybrids possess human appearance, language, and behavior, allowing them to blend seamlessly into human society while retaining the Draco reptilians' abilities in mental control and core consciousness. They became the perfect pieces for infiltrating the upper echelons of human power. Through marriage alliances and hereditary succession, they gradually took control of key sectors such as politics, finance, media, and education, locking humanity in place across three dimensions: ideology, economics, and power. This reptilian infiltration of human society, they say, is not mere speculation. There are rumors that Princess Diana once privately complained that the British royal family was not human, but reptilian. After Diana's death in a car crash, Muhammad al-Fayed, the father of her boyfriend Dodi, publicly accused the British royal family of being a blood-sucking reptilian clan, suggesting that Diana's death was connected to her knowledge of royal hybrid secrets. There are also claims that former British Prime Minister Edward Heath was once seen, between interview segments, with his pupils momentarily turning completely black, interpreted as a sign of a reptilian form briefly revealing itself. Similar pupil transformation stories frequently appear in accounts involving US presidents, Canadian prime ministers, and other Western political leaders, and are regarded by believers as ironclad proof of reptilian control. In the financial sphere, the Rothschild family is often cited as the central focus. Conspiracy theorists believe that this family, which is said to control the lifeblood of the global financial system, accumulated centuries of wealth and power through hybrid intermarriage with the reptilian race. By using money to buy off puppet leaders around the world, manipulating central banks, engineering economic crises, and monopolizing gold trading, they allegedly achieved control over the global economy, serving the reptilians' core objective of harvesting human wealth and negative emotional energy. After seizing control of humanity's power centers through these human-reptilian hybrids, the Draco reptilians then set out to manufacture internal conflict, bind desire, and destroy spirituality within human society. In this way, they achieved long-term enslavement, turning humanity, often without awareness, into a continuous source of energy for the Draco reptilians. The Xanada beings also claim that nearly all large-scale wars in human history were not accidental struggles for power, but deliberately planned energy harvesting operations, orchestrated by the Draco reptilians through their hybrid elites. Because the Draco reptilians cannot generate emotional energy themselves, they rely on feeding off human fear, hatred, grief, and other negative emotions to increase their own power. War is the most efficient way to produce such emotions. Thus, political leaders under hybrid control incite ethnic tensions, manufacture territorial disputes, and support opposing factions to deliberately ignite conflicts, trapping humanity in a cycle of mutual slaughter. From the two world wars to ongoing regional conflicts, all are said to bear the shadow of reptilian influence. World War I and World War II, at their core, were allegedly engineered by the Draco reptilians to purge highly spiritual Lyran descendants, test the destructive capabilities of human weapons, and intensify racial and national divisions. Long-term unrest in the Middle East, meanwhile, is portrayed as a means of continuously harvesting negative emotional energy while controlling vital energy resources, further consolidating financial and political dominance. Even more alarming, war obstructs cooperative human progress, steering technological development toward weapons rather than spiritual growth and interstellar exploration, thereby cutting off the possibility of human awakening at its root. If war is the hard method, then the manipulation of material desire is the Draco reptilians' soft blade for enslaving humanity. Through the financial, media, and commercial systems controlled by their hybrids, they deliberately construct a money above all value system within human society, trapping people in endless material pursuits and causing them to completely ignore their spiritual nature and genetic potential. As commonly circulated in conspiracy circles, the capital forces controlled by the reptilian race intentionally create cycles of involution, pushing humans to compete with one another for better material lives and to exhaust all their energy on internal struggle. Yet people rarely realize that the so-called standards of success are themselves carefully designed cages. When humanity becomes obsessed with the closed loop of earning money, consuming, and indulging, it naturally neglects the development of spiritual power and fails to notice that it is being harvested for energy. The Draco reptilians' million-year control over Earth is, at its core, a war of consciousness blockade. Their aim is not to destroy humanity, but to keep humans permanently trapped within third-dimensional awareness, unable to awaken the spiritual abilities of their Lyran ancestry, and forever reduced to a genetic reservoir and energy source. Their ultimate objective is to turn Earth into a prison planet of the Milky Way, with humanity as perpetual livestock, while using Earth as a base from which to further expand Draco influence throughout the galaxy. However, the Zenita beings emphasize that humanity is not without the power to resist. The emotional energy inherent in Lyran genetics is precisely the force the Draco reptilians lack most and fear most. Being cold-blooded and incapable of experiencing love, kindness, warmth, and other positive emotions, the Draco reptilians are vulnerable to the powerful collective consciousness waves these emotions can generate. Waves that can dismantle the reptilians' mental control grid and break genetic-level restrictions. The Zenita beings then told Collier that humanity's way out does not lie in relying on rescue by extraterrestrial allies, but in self-awakening. When a sufficient number of humans free themselves from fear, anxiety, and other negative emotions, actively transmit positive energy, and awaken the genetic memories of their Lyran heritage, they can form a force capable of opposing the Draco reptilians. This force can not only shatter a million-year control network, but also propel human civilization into the fifth density, allowing it to reclaim the lost glory of Lyran civilization. The core of this struggle has never been a contest of technology, but a battle of consciousness and the mind.